Hi everybody, this is Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the February My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. For this layout, I'm using some of the pattern papers from the Simple Stories Simple Vintage Love Story collection that was in the February kit. I used some triangle dies in 3 different sizes that I had in my stash, and I cut out 2 really large triangles, 2 medium triangles, and 2 smaller triangles out of 3 different pattern papers. I also cut out 3 white triangles for each of the pattern paper triangles. I used some ATG adhesive to attach 3 white triangles together, and then I placed the pattern paper triangle on the top, and then I used some inks and I inked the edges of each of the triangles. For the largest and the smallest triangles, I used Distress Oxide in Fired Brick, and I used Distress Ink in Black Soot to ink the edges of those 2 medium-sized triangles with the black floral print. I'm going to create a mixed media background. So I have a piece of my favorite cardstock. It's 120-pound smooth white cardstock, and I always coat it with some Liquitex gesso. And because the paper will warp just a little bit when I put the gesso on the background, I then run it through my laminator, and that flattens it out. And I got that tip from a Paige Evans video. I'm using some sprays and the packaging technique, and I'm adding some color to the background. Earlier, I used a pencil and I made some marks where I knew I was going to place the triangles on the background, and this helps to guide me as to where to put the color. I'm going to have a yellow background. I thought that would be a nice color that would highlight all of the pattern papers that I chose. The spray that I start out with is a Prima Color Bloom 2 spray in Spring Dandelion. In addition to putting color down where I'm going to have those triangles, I also put a small area of color in the upper left-hand corner and another one in the lower right-hand corner where I'm going to add some additional clusters. In between each application of color, I use a heat tool to dry it, and then I add the next layer of color, and that helps the color to get a little bit darker and richer with each layer. Now that I have several layers of yellow on the background, I'm going to use one of my favorite techniques, which is taking some water and sprinkling it over the areas where I added the sprays to the page. And then I roll the paper towel over the top. That picks up the water. The water picks up a little bit of the paint, and it makes a really cool effect on the background. I love adding splatters to mixed media backgrounds. I think that the splatters add so much energy. So I'm tapping on the straw to splatter the color, not only all over those yellow areas, but also all around the border where you can really see the splatter as well. I wanted there to be a little bit of variation in the color, so I'm using a Lindy's Starburst spray in Grab a Guy Gold, and I'm adding some splatters of that too. I don't show all of the footage, but I continue adding quite a few splatters to the background, and then I dry the entire background with the heat tool. And then once again, I splatter some water on the background so that I can lift it up and create that cool water droplet effect. I love this technique because it makes some areas a little bit lighter, and then adding the splatters makes some areas a little bit darker, and the combination of the two, I think, makes even a background that's only one color more interesting. The impact of the water droplets is much more visible on a darker color background, but I think that it's still worth adding those droplets to even a yellow background because the effects are so cool. And then I just can't help myself. I add some more yellow splatters to the background, and then I dry it completely. And I know that the background looks a little funky right now, but it will look better once I add those triangles back in. I wanted to add a little bit of texture to the layout, so I'm using some modeling paste and a stencil from the Crafters Workshop. It's called Mini Cherry Blossoms. I'm using the stencil on the areas where I already have the yellow background applied. And while only a little bit of this texture is visible in the final layout, I still think it's worth it for those little bits of modeling paste that show through around all of the triangles and all of the embellishments. I know that a lot of people are hesitant to try making a mixed media background because there are a lot of materials and it's not as straightforward as scrapbooking with just paper. If you're thinking of trying it, I would really encourage you to do so. It's really fun. You don't have to be an amazing artist to do it. If you look at my background right now, it looks like a lot of big yellow splotches, and it won't look like anything until all of the other elements are layered on top. So the worst thing that could happen if you try a mixed media background and you don't like it is that you have to throw away a couple of pieces of white paper. I mention this because I've had quite a few comments where viewers have said things like, I hope one day to have the courage to make a mixed media background, and it really isn't as big of a deal as it looks. It's really just playing with some paints on a piece of white paper. I scrapbooked for many, many years without using mixed media, and even though I still will make pages that don't involve any paint or any modeling paste, I do love the idea of having that as an option. So that's my little pep talk about using mixed media. I hope that you'll give it a try. Earlier, I added some watered down white acrylic paint splatters to my background, and then I also used a little bit of gesso to clean up some of the areas where there was a lot of splatter. Now I'm using some distress ink to ink the edges of those black pattern paper triangles. The reason I waited until now is because there was a really nice pattern on the other side of that paper too, and I wasn't sure which side I was going to use, and I finally decided that I wanted to use this beautiful floral side. Now I have all of my triangles arranged where I want them on my page. I'm using some ATG adhesive to attach them down to the background. Now, since there's so much modeling paste on the background, I'm going to have to use some wet glue to adhere them permanently to the page. I could have just used the glue right here, but I do like to use the ATG adhesive just in case I want to move anything around. That's really not necessary. It just comes from me knowing that I do like to move things around, and I don't like things to be permanently attached down, if possible, until I'm absolutely sure that I like the composition. So that's why I use ATG adhesive, but of course you could just go right in there and glue things down on your page. And on this particular layout, I do end up leaving all of the elements in the background exactly where I put them down initially, which is kind of rare for me. So this is the photo that I'm going to use. This is a photo of my daughter Danielle from quite a few years ago. I mounted the photo first on some white cardstock, and then I made a slightly larger circle out of black cardstock to mat it on again. And now I'm attaching it down to the layout. To embellish the layout, I fussy cut out a whole bunch of embellishments from one of the pattern papers. I used fossilized amber, Victorian velvet, and evergreen bough distress oxides to ink the edges of all of these fussy cut pieces. I matched the color of the embellishment to the color of distress oxide that I used. Now it's time to start assembling the layout. I'm going to use this title Forever. That's going to go in the upper left-hand corner, and I'll be working on that cluster in a little while. And then in the lower right-hand corner, I have a piece of chipboard. It's a stack of letters that have been tied together with a ribbon. And then I'm also going to use one of the fussy cut birds in that lower right-hand corner. Off camera, I added some cardstock to the sticker that says Forever. I just wanted to make sure that it was sturdy because I know I'm going to be putting some embellishments behind and around it. And the cardstock makes it a little easier for me to be able to move that title around and work with it. I have a number of the beautiful Prima flowers that came in the kit arranged around my photo. I also have one flower in the upper right-hand corner and one in the lower left-hand corner. I'm adding a number of those fussy cut flowers around the triangles. I'm not going to go too crazy adding tons and tons of florals on this layout just because there's already a lot happening with all of the pattern papers. The papers in the kit this month had all of my favorite elements for working with on scrapbooking layouts. There were lots and lots of florals, there were butterflies, and there were even birds, which is another thing that I love to include on my layouts. So I used birds on a couple of my layouts. I have now a bluebird that I fussy cut out right behind the word forever in the upper left-hand corner, and I like the way that bird is looking to the right, and then the bird in the lower right-hand corner is looking to the left. And now I'm adding in some of those butterflies. I put some smaller butterflies in the two opposite corners, and then I also add a big butterfly on top of the photo. However, I'm going to switch that butterfly out for some pink butterflies. I thought that the blue matched in too well with the flowers, and I wanted that butterfly to contrast with the other elements that are around it. In the kit this month, there was a set of chipboard that had a number of little tiny hearts. I love using little details like that to embellish the page. So I picked this really beautiful blue heart. I just love that color, and I attached that down to the title. Earlier, I added a pen that's a chipboard piece to the large triangle on the left-hand side of the layout. I'm going to end up removing that. It just was a little bit too large for the spot that I had it in. Sometimes I'll add things and then take them away. You never know until you try it out, but it was just a little bit too much, especially for that spot. Now I'm using some foam and I'm popping up the wings of all of the butterflies on the page. I love adding a little bit of dimension to the butterfly wings. It's nice to have that contrast of the dimensional butterflies with the other elements that are attached directly down to the page. In order to attach the Prima flowers down to the layout, I use some heavy gel medium. For attaching down flowers, I use matte medium. There's also a gel medium if you ever want to make anything on your page nice and shiny. I'm using one of my really old bristle brushes to apply the gel medium because essentially it's glue. I don't want to ruin my good brushes. Although as long as you wash them right away, the gel medium will come out. And I shouldn't make fun of these brushes because I've had them for so many years and the bristles never come out. I find that some of the new ones I buy aren't as high quality. They definitely don't look too good, but they do work very well. There were some leaves in this month's kit in one of the flower packs. I really liked them a lot, but I felt that they were just a little bit too large for this particular layout, so I end up removing them. But I do use all of these beautiful tiny pink flowers. I thought that these were a perfect complement to the size of the larger flowers. So I cut them off of their stems into individual pieces and I tucked them into the flower clusters that I have around the page. And I shouldn't say I cut them off of their stems. I just cut the stems much shorter. If you cut the stems off totally, I think that the center of the flower will come out. So definitely don't do that. But it was easier to manipulate them when the stems were cut shorter. As I had mentioned, I wanted to replace the blue butterfly on top of the photo with some pink butterflies. I have 3 fussy cut pink butterflies. They're all the same image in different sizes. So I inked the edges of all 3 of these butterflies using Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide. I used some fun foam to add some dimension to the wings of the medium-sized butterfly and the smallest butterfly. I'm not going to add any foam to the larger butterfly. Then I add some adhesive to the back of the medium butterfly. I attach that to the larger one, and then I do the same thing with the smallest butterfly. And now I have this layered butterfly that I think looks really cute, and I replace the blue butterfly, and I think that the pink butterfly looks much better there. These blue flowers that were in the kit this month are absolutely beautiful. Each of the petals has a white frosted edge to it that I absolutely love. It looks so pretty. I decided to add a little bit more glitter to all of these flowers, including the little pink ones. I'm using some Opal glitter medium. I got this at Hobby Lobby. It was on a big clearance, but I did notice that they still have it there. It's relatively inexpensive, especially if you look for the sales. And then I used, once again, my really old bristle brush, and I added a layer of glitter to all of the flowers on the layout. This is when I decided to remove that chipboard pen from the layout. And then I ultimately decided that I had to add a little bit of foam to the back of the butterfly because The right side of the butterfly is sitting on top of the triangle, which has a little bit of dimension. So I had to add a little bit of foam to the other side so that the butterfly would sit correctly on the page. I love to add elements to the page that are not paper so that there's a variety of materials. I think that just adds to the overall look of the page. I like to add pearls to the centers of butterflies. I use strips of adhesive pearls. I got these strips of pearls on a clearance sale, again at Hobby Lobby. These are 4mm pearls. You can get 3mm strips of pearls from the Brad and Eyelet outlet. I really like the 3mm strips too. Those are very delicate. I added a sentiment to my title, so it now reads Forever in My Heart. The In My Heart is a sticker from the sticker sheet. I also added one of those pearls from the strips of pearls to the heart that's on the title. In this month's kit, we got pearls, loose pearls, which I think is so awesome. They came in 3 different colors. For this particular layout, I'm just using the white pearls, and I'm adding just a couple of them to each of the dimensional flowers that are on the layout. When I place pearls on my flowers, and when there are multiple flowers, I try to make sure that the composition of the pearls looks different on all of the flowers. So I'll vary how close to the center I put the pearls and what side of the flower the pearls are on, just to give some variety. I love adding these little die-cut white branches to my layouts. I'm trying to be very conservative with them. I just wanted to add a couple of them just to add a small effect to the layout, but I didn't go crazy. Sometimes I add a whole bunch of them. Now I'm using some gel glue to attach all of those little die-cut pieces down. And for those, I used some dies that are in my stash. I have lots and lots of dies that create these little branches that look like they have buds on them. And then to attach the pearls down to the flowers, I use some glossy accents, which I think is the best adhesive for attaching things like pearls and sequins and rhinestones to pages. And then at the last moment, I decided to add just a couple of slightly larger pearls to complement those smaller pearls that I already have on the layout. I'm not adding a ton of them. I used to fill up the flowers with lots and lots of pearls, and now I realize that you only need a couple to add a nice accent to the flowers. And then as I was looking at the layout, I realized that in the lower right-hand corner, I didn't have anything that was blue. It was the only place on the page that didn't have blue. So I found some little fussy cut flowers. I added those to the layout, and this layout is now complete. And here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. This was a little bit of a longer video, and I can't thank you enough for staying all the way to the end. I hope that you enjoyed watching it, and I hope that if you're considering trying out mixed media, that you give it a try. If you're not a subscriber to My Creative Scrapbook and you would like to become one, you can find all the information on their website. The link to their website is in the description box. I highly recommend the limited edition kit. It's my favorite. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see all of you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.